The day began with heat rising off the manicured lawns of the millionaire's estate, the kind of heat that made everything shimmer and exaggerated every sound, every movement, every whisper of anticipation. Guests arrived in polished cars, their laughter sharp and confident, drawn not by friendship but by spectacle, because rumors had spread fast about the untamable horse and the arrogant bet attached to it. At the center of the estate stood the paddock, clean and wide, surrounded by white fences that looked delicate compared to the raw power pacing inside them. The stallion was jet black, tall and broad, its muscles rolling beneath its skin like coiled steel, its eyes bright with defiance and memory. It stomped, snorted, and circled, a living challenge to anyone foolish enough to approach. The millionaire stood nearby, relaxed, almost bored, swirling a drink in his hand as if this were just another investment he already knew would pay off. He spoke loudly, confidently, repeating the wager for those who had not yet heard it. A fortune for anyone who could tame the horse, and public humiliation for anyone who failed. Professional trainers stepped forward first, men with strong arms, expensive gear, and long resumes. One tried firmness, cracking commands and tightening reins, only to be thrown violently into the dirt within seconds. Another tried patience, slow movements and practiced calm, but the horse sensed calculation instead of respect and reared, forcing him to retreat. Each failure brought laughter from the crowd and a satisfied smile from the millionaire, whose belief in his own dominance grew stronger with every fallen challenger. Servants whispered nervously at the edges, knowing how many had been hurt before, knowing this horse was less a creature and more a symbol of the millionaire's pride. As the sun climbed higher, dust hung in the air, mixing with sweat and perfume, and the crowd began to treat the failures as entertainment rather than warning. It was then, almost unnoticed, that a barefoot street boy appeared near the outer gate. His presence so out of place it seemed unreal. His clothes were worn thin, his hair unkempt, his skin marked by days spent under open skies, yet his eyes were sharp and observant, quietly taking in everything. He had followed the noise, drawn by curiosity and the familiar smell of animals, and now he stood watching the stallion, not with fear or excitement, but with recognition, as if he understood something others did not. Guards moved to shoo him away, annoyed at the disruption of perfection, but the boy did not resist or argue. He simply asked a question, soft and steady, about the horse. The millionaire overheard and laughed, a sound filled with disbelief and mockery, turning his attention toward the boy as the crowd followed his gaze. A street child, dirty and thin, standing among silk and confidence. It was absurd, and that absurdity amused him. When the boy, after a brief pause, asked if he could try to tame the horse, laughter burst out louder than before, echoing across the estate like a cruel chorus. The millionaire raised an eyebrow, studying the boy as one might study a curiosity, not a person, and then, with a careless shrug, agreed. To him, allowing this was not risk but entertainment, another way to prove that power and money decided who could succeed. The terms were repeated, the bet reaffirmed, and the boy nodded, as if he had agreed to something simple, something familiar. As the gates to the paddock opened, a hush slowly replaced laughter, curiosity battling ridicule. The stallion sensed a new presence and turned sharply, muscles tensing, hooves digging into the ground. The boy stepped inside alone. No saddle, no rope, no show of authority, only calm steps and controlled breathing. Every instinct in the crowd expected disaster, a violent end to a foolish attempt. Yet something about the boy's posture made them watch more closely. He did not charge forward or freeze in fear. He stopped, allowing distance, allowing the horse to decide. The stallion snorted and stamped, testing, warning, and the boy listened with his whole body, remembering nights on the street where listening meant survival. He spoke softly, not words meant to command but sounds meant to soothe, a low rhythm carried by patience. The millionaire's confident smile began to stiffen, just slightly, as minutes passed without catastrophe. The crowd leaned in, sensing that this attempt felt different, though they could not explain why. Dust floated between boy and beast as they circled each other slowly, two lives shaped by hardship meeting in the middle of wealth and arrogance. The horse lunged once, and the boy stepped back smoothly, not defeated, not afraid, simply acknowledging the warning. That moment, subtle and quiet, marked the true beginning, not of control but of understanding, and somewhere beneath the millionaire's certainty, the first small crack began to form. Time seemed to stretch inside the paddock as the boy and the stallion continued their silent exchange, the world beyond the white fences fading into a distant blur of expensive shoes and shallow breaths. The boy moved slowly, deliberately, as if every step carried weight and meaning, never turning his back on the horse, never challenging it head-on. He had learned long ago that survival depended on reading signs others ignored. The twitch of a muscle, the rhythm of breathing, the way fear changed the air. And now those instincts guided him more than any formal training ever could. The stallion circled, ears flicking back and forth, nostrils flaring as it tested the boy's scent and presence, searching for weakness or threat. Each time it stamped or tossed its head, the boy adjusted, stepping sideways, lowering his shoulders, softening his gaze, offering calm instead of resistance. The crowd watched in uneasy silence, unsure whether they were witnessing courage or madness. While the millionaire shifted his weight, irritation creeping in where amusement once lived. He had expected noise, chaos, failure, not this quiet standoff that felt almost intimate. Dust clung to the boy's feet as he spoke softly, not in commands but in murmurs, sounds shaped by nights calming frightened dogs and injured horses in abandoned lots, where trust was the only currency that mattered. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the stallion's movements began to change. Its rearing grew less violent, its pacing less frantic, as curiosity edged out aggression. The boy noticed first, sensing the shift before it was visible, and he waited, letting the moment ripen rather than rushing to claim it. When he finally reached out, his hand moved with care, stopping inches from the horse's neck, a question rather than a demand. The stallion snorted sharply, muscles tensing, and the boy froze, not pulling away, not pressing forward, allowing the animal to choose. Seconds passed like hours until, at last, the stallion leaned forward, breath warm against the boy's skin, and allowed the touch. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, breaking the silence like a crack of thunder. The boy's fingers rested lightly on the horse's neck, feeling heat, strength, and old scars beneath the smooth coat, and in that touch was recognition. A shared understanding of what it meant to be pushed, used, and misunderstood. Encouraged but cautious, the boy moved along the stallion's side, keeping contact, keeping his presence steady, whispering low sounds that blended with the rhythm of the horse's breathing. The stallion shifted, testing again, but did not strike or flee, as if something within it had decided to listen. The millionaire's jaw tightened as he watched, his confidence wavering under the weight of a possibility he had never considered. This was not how power was supposed to work. The boy took another step, then another, moving as if guided by the horse's own energy, matching it rather than opposing it. When he finally prepared to mount, there was no dramatic flourish, no triumphant pause, only a smooth, instinctive motion born of balance and trust. The stallion reacted instantly, muscles exploding into motion as it bucked and surged forward. A sudden storm unleashed. Cries rose from the crowd, some in alarm, some in excitement, as the boy held on with his legs and body, not gripping in fear but flowing with the movement, letting the horse's power carry rather than throw him. He adjusted his weight with each jolt, remembering falls from fences, from moving trucks, from moments where the ground had rushed up to meet him, and how learning to roll instead of resist had saved him more than once. The stallion ran in tight circles, testing boundaries, expecting pain or punishment, but the boy gave none, only balance and patience. Slowly, the wild energy began to settle, the circles widening, the bucking losing its fury. The boy leaned forward, resting his hands against the horse's neck, breathing in time with it, letting his calm sink deep. At last, the stallion slowed to a walk, then stopped entirely, standing tall and still with the boy seated bareback, as if they had reached an unspoken agreement. Silence fell heavy and absolute, broken only by the soft sound of the horse's breathing. The millionaire stared, glass forgotten in his hand, as reality forced its way through pride. What stood before him was not a broken animal or a defeated child, but a partnership he could neither buy nor control, and in that moment, the rules he had lived by began to unravel. The moment lingered longer than anyone expected. The boy seated calmly on the stallion's back while disbelief washed over the estate like a slow, unstoppable tide. The crowd, once loud and hungry for failure, now stood frozen, their expressions caught somewhere between awe and confusion, as if they had witnessed a rule of the world quietly break. The stallion shifted its weight beneath the boy, powerful yet composed, no longer the raging symbol of defiance it had been moments before. The boy slid down gently, landing on the dusty ground with the ease of someone used to hard surfaces, and rested his forehead briefly against the horse's neck, whispering something only the animal could hear. The stallion lowered its head in response, a simple gesture that carried more meaning than any applause ever could. That was when the silence finally shattered, not with laughter, but with stunned murmurs spreading through the guests like fire through dry grass. The millionaire stepped forward slowly, his polished shoes crunching against the gravel, every confident step he had taken earlier now heavy with something unfamiliar. His face, once relaxed and amused, had tightened into a mask of forced composure, eyes fixed on the boy as if trying to understand how something so small could dismantle something so carefully constructed. He cleared his throat and spoke, his voice louder than necessary, announcing that a bet was a bet, though the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. Servants hurried to fulfill the promise, bringing documents, cash, proof that wealth could still move quickly even when pride resisted. The boy watched quietly, not smiling, not celebrating, simply standing beside the horse with a hand resting on its warm flank, grounding himself in something real. When the millionaire finally handed over the reward, his hand trembled, and for the briefest moment, his gaze dropped. Not in respect exactly, but in reluctant acknowledgement. Applause followed, hesitant at first, then growing, as if people needed noise to process what they had seen. The boy flinched slightly at the sound, unused to being the center of attention, and glanced around as if looking for an exit. Voices called out questions, praise, disbelief, but he answered none of them, his attention still on the horse, checking its breathing, its stance, making sure it was calm. Someone asked how he had learned to do it, and when the boy finally spoke, his voice was quiet but clear, explaining that he had not tried to tame the horse at all. He said he had simply listened, because fear sounded the same whether it came from a hungry child or a powerful animal, and both reacted badly to force. The simplicity of his words unsettled the crowd more than any dramatic speech could have. The millionaire, struggling to reclaim control of the moment, offered the boy a place on the estate, an education, fine clothes, a future wrapped in privilege, speaking as if these things were gifts only he could grant. The boy listened politely, then looked around at the manicured lawns, the expensive cars, the people who had laughed when he stepped forward, and he hesitated. He admitted that he wanted a chance, but not to be owned or displayed like a curiosity, not to become another possession that proved someone else's power. The honesty in his answer struck deeper than defiance. After a pause that felt longer than the earlier silence in the paddock, the millionaire nodded, agreeing to terms that surprised everyone, including himself. As the crowd slowly dispersed, carrying the story with them like a secret too good to keep, the estate felt different, quieter, as if something essential had been exposed. The stallion was led away gently, no longer restrained by harsh hands, and the boy walked beside it, guiding rather than pulling. The millionaire stood alone for a moment, staring at the empty paddock where certainty had once ruled, realizing that the most expensive lesson of his life had not been about horses or bets, but about the limits of power when faced with empathy. Long after the guests were gone and the dust had settled, the image remained clear in every witness's mind. A street boy and an untamable horse standing together, not conquered, not broken, but understood, and in that understanding, everything had changed.